Hello and happy N7 Day. I'm not Commander Shepard, and I also probably do a terrible Mark Meer impression, but it's N7 Day, and I wanted an excuse to yap about my favorite sci-fi game series for a while. So if you're watching this video, please stay tuned for some absolutely insane English, because that always fails me at some point, I swear, and hopefully you enjoy it, because today we're going to be talking about Mass Effect on Legendary. So, unfortunately, I have gone through all 3 save files I have on Mass Effect 1 for my Legendary Edition run, and there isn't a single one that isn't on a level other than Saren or me having to run around the entire time. Unfortunately, that's fun on a playthrough, but I mean, when you want to talk about the difficulty of a game, you don't exactly want to show the parts that don't really include the difficulty. So, yeah. To get past that, though, to get into it first as well, what was that sentence? Mass Effect 1 plays the most like a classic RPG out of the entire trilogy, with Shepard and all his teammates starting out with some relatively normal gear, and then you get more guns, stronger numbers, and all that crazy fancy classic RPG stuff during the second half and third half of the game, respectively, though I'd say Mass Effect 1 starts out more difficult than it ends, as most RPGs should, but unfortunately, outside of Saren, Mass Effect 1 can become ridiculously easy thanks to some weapon mods. Weapons, at some point, I don't know how, but usually around like Novaria, really high-grade weapons just start dropping out of every enemy corpse, and that just really trivializes the game. Not to mention the fact that certain classes also just absolutely are busted. I mean, Mass Effect 1... there's a reason my brother and I call it Mass Effect 1 Throw, because it just absolutely screws over any enemy in any vicinity near you. I mean, literally that thing just... it nukes the crap out of any anything, and just sends them flying. On top of that as well, as you can see here, the weapon mods in Mass Effect 1 do a ton of damage, most notably the polonium, high explosive, and inferno rounds. So that all comes together for I wouldn't say like super difficult experience, but it is something that definitely starts much more difficult than it ends. And I mean, when I say it ends, to those who, it's one of those cases where most of the video I'm probably going to sound like this. I'm trying to explain stuff that people that I think have played the games probably understand more than I really can put into words, but I mean, if you've played Mass Effect 1 and you've kind of gone through all this, getting all of these really stronger gear and biotic builds and that, you know what I mean when it's like the end game really, it can be a joke, you know? Not in a bad way, but it is still definitely not as difficult, and I mean definitely by a very, very large margin, especially when you factor in some shields and armors you can get as well, such as damping and the speed of health regeneration. Mass Effect 1's Legendary, I mean, it's not super balanced, but I mean, it's not as dumb as, I'd say, probably Mass Effect 2, which I think probably is the dumbest. Did I say Legendary this whole time? Insanity in case I said Legendary, but no, it's fun. It's definitely serviceable enough for a first game's intro, though I'd say your biggest difficulty the game's gonna give you probably depends on which version you're playing, as the original was not exactly the greatest performing game on the 360, PS3, well, when it was ported to PS3, and really on PC. Not to mention, even with Legendary Edition, the controls are pretty clunky, and taking cover works really weirdly, as you don't really have to push a button to, like, enter cover, you just kind of run into it. And that can kind of screw you over at the early game when your shields are, like I said, you start out super, super small shields. I mean, what, some early game shields are like, maybe I think maybe like maximum 100, where your end game shields can easily push up to 400, or 450 as well, you know? So you really, really basically take no damage by the end of the game. And like I said, that all comes together to make you feel very powerful, but just the difficulty definitely has a steep drop-off during Mass Effect 1. And yeah, I think that sums up my thoughts. I feel it's really close to being very well balanced. I just think the ease at which you randomly start getting the strongest guns in the game, and the weapon mods, especially some of the like the polonium rounds and high explosive rounds and sniper rifles, are just insane. I think those 2 elements alone kind of bring down Mass Effect 1 as a, you know, difficulty experience. Now, for our next segment, because today I figured out how to change gameplay. Now, moving on to Mass Effect 2. Also, yeah, I think I have a little trick. We have different games today. Yay! Mass Effect 2 is the Mass Effect that really puts insane in insanity with... I don't know. Let's put it like this. After Shepard died, every enemy decided to go outfit every part of their kit with S.H.I.E.L.D. And every other enemy installed Aimbot 2010. Which just makes the game a great blast of ground insanity. Couple that with the, as usual, damage increase of the player, and, like I said, aimbot, and you're in for an experience that is memorable for all the wrong reasons outside of the main campaign still being excellent peak Bioware writing. Why is Mass Effect 2 as stupid as that, though? Mainly because, like I said, where Mass Effect 1 enables you to kind of relatively decently bypass the game by just playing it through, as your abilities, guns, gear, and mods increase in power, and the game becomes more easy as it goes on. Mass Effect 2 is the only game in the series where there is no real, I don't know, weapon modification. You have some skill trees, but I mean, even to what you'll see in Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2 skill trees are very small, and the abilities of Mass Effect 2 don't really do much damage when you're on Insanity, when, like I said, every enemy has a health bar, which means it has 2 health bars, which means that they negate any sort of AoE damage. So any ability like a shockwave, like this, would not do any damage to that enemy at that point because they would still have their shield on, which means you have to bypass that, which means every enemy has to first be taken down well in health bar before they can be dealt any other form of damage, which is fine, and for a game that wants to really promote skilled play, that's a very fun combat system. The problem in my case comes to the fact that Mass Effect 2 isn't built exactly around that. Now what I mean by that is its movement. I always say unintentionally, because I don't think Bioware were making the game and planning it out like that by then. But I always say Mass Effect 2's combat, I'm sorry about my English there. Mass Effect 2's combat was built for Mass Effect 3's engine, not Mass Effect 3's engine, Mass Effect 3's movement without knowing it. As the ability to perma-sprint, dodge roll, and just the general extra mobility Shepard has while moving, aiming, and interacting with the environment in Mass Effect 3 would really benefit the much more stringent and narrow gameplay of Mass Effect 2, being able to roll backwards during some of the attacks, most notably Psychons, because, oh, goody. Psychons. I forgot about them, I'm sorry. Being able to roll and get out of the way of a Psychon's attack allows one before it absolutely destroys you in cover and then leaves you out, because for some reason Mass Effect 2, I don't know if the other, I cannot remember for the life of me, having played all the other Mass Effect games, if it does that, but Mass Effect 2 has a stun animation, which I don't think Mass Effect 1 or 3 has. And what happens with the Psychons in that case is, Shepard's already weaker on Insanity, so you're left with a case of the Psychons pop out, they one-shot you into a stunned animation, and you're not able to escape out of that animation. So any other upcoming damage rips through your shield, and you are just screwed. It is a nightmare to fight them, and honestly, it's a nightmare to fight a decent amount of enemies sometimes, just because of the pure, like I said, unrelentingness of the enemies. Now, if you're terrible at the game like I am, demonstrating here, it is probably also more difficult. But I mean, I'd like to think for generally more skilled players as well, it is also a challenge, as once again, the movement doesn't exactly always line up well, but playing on Legendary Edition definitely helps, as the original 30 FPS on Xbox 360 and PS3, that definitely creates an extra problem, as you're not able to move in and out as quickly, and it's just a bit more difficult. That being said though, Mass Effect 2 is still fun to play, and I would recommend an Insanity run, especially if you're going for, let's say, the Platinum or 100%. I just wouldn't really recommend it as your, you know, like, way of playing the game every playthrough. Like I said with Mass Effect 1, Insanity starts out a bit difficult there, but you can really bypass it quickly. I mean, honestly, if you are up to understanding how that works, I just play Mass Effect 1 on Insanity all the time now. Though Mass Effect 2, like I said, is the opposite. I feel I can't in good conscience recommend you always play Mass Effect 2 on Insanity, though that might also stem from me having played as Soldier. I have heard that other classes work better, since each shield type needs to be taken down by another type of ammo or abilities, such as warp and warp ammo breaking barriers, and fire ammo breaking armor, and obviously electrical ammo cutting down shields. But the problem with that is not every class sometimes has those abilities at their disposal, so you are left with having to also pick more tactically on your team, which is fine. Relying on your team in a more tactical manner is no problem in a gameplay loop. But the problem is that your team, similarly to Shepard, can also turn into wet cardboard. I mean, I think I have somewhere on my PlayStation 5 a compilation of pictures and clips every time Tali just walked out of cover and got flinged about 35 feet into that container because she just got killed that quickly. And I think that about sums it up with Mass Effect 2. The overall experience is just more difficult. The overall game itself is definitely more fun than Mass Effect 1, with much more tighter gameplay, much more unique weapons, and a definitely more snappy feeling to how the guns aim and control. But unfortunately, like I said, it's aimbot insanity. In my opinion, overbearance on. Are you kidding me? See, this is what I get for trying to sound like I know what I'm talking about. The game just killed me for it. Long story short, Mass Effect 2's insanity really is difficult for a lot of other reasons I also didn't really go into. Well, actually, I think I went into everybody. I just want to sound smart now. Sorry. I've been trying to do this like 5 or 10 times. I restarted this mission about 4 times now because I keep trying to record this properly. But that, I think, sums it up on Mass Effect 2. It is, in some cases, much more fairly difficult, but in a lot of cases on insanity, I feel it is difficulty for difficulty's sake. Now, let's move on to Mass Effect 3. I'm terribly sorry I had to watch this segment. Mass Effect 3 is my favorite, but I really feel I failed here. On our final segment and ranking. So, Mass Effect 3. Once again, the combat loop found a tiny bit of a rework in Mass Effect 3. Not as major as Mass Effect 2 to 1, but Mass Effect 1 takes what works from the original 2 and mixes up into a very surprisingly still fun combat loop still by today's standards, with the weapon modification and more detailed RPG elements of the first game being brought back in, and the much more action-focused approach of the second game, both mixing together to create a relatively fun experience that does mix its powers, abilities, and classes together for a really fun experience. Most of that, definitely in my opinion, comes from the fact that Mass Effect 3 has finally learned that not every character needs a shield or needs to have some insane damage boost to be fun to fight. Though some enemies can feel bullet spongy depending on which gear you use, it's never as bad as Mass Effect 2, and it never gets as overly, in my opinion, insane as Mass Effect 1, as the movement was also improved. So you're not stuck with a huge tanker enemy that you can kill quickly with some weapons, but it still kills you a billion times because you can't move fast enough to dodge it. So that being said, Mass Effect 3 definitely plays the best out of the series as established, but as for an actual difficulty standpoint, where does it rank with that? Well, that, in my opinion, also boils down on how you decide to play Mass Effect 3. Because the classes are, like I said, all more viable, but there is one secret, one very well-known secret in the community that can absolutely upend any playthrough. And that is Garrus and the N7 Typhoon. Now, for those of you who might be new to the community or don't know about this, equipping Garrus with the N7 Typhoon of any level, upgrading his armor-piercing ammo, and speccing him into some other skills as well, including his AR damage, and giving him the Turian, more military-looking camo armor, grants him an insane damage boost that basically ends up allowing the game to be played by itself and turn every combat encounter into a set-piece moment where you can just take pictures and, I don't know, snooze off. But that being said, that is the biggest way that Mass Effect 3 actively gets handicapped, or gets, I'd say cheated, like you can kind of do with Mass Effect 1 by just being a biotic, as even biotics found a decent nerf but still feel good. In general, the best way to describe it is Mass Effect 3 just feels much more consistent, much more smooth compared to the rest of the series. And that's honestly, I think, the best way to describe it. It's a smoother experience, there's some more details brought in. It's not revolutionary, but its weapon modifications, its overall mobility, and refinement to movement really do help it stand out. Now, with that being said, you have suffered through this video for this entire point, so let's get to the ranking so you can enjoy the rest of your night. So at the most difficult would obviously be Mass Effect 2. As I said earlier, I think the game is just not really balanced for insanity, like hit scan enemies, insane amounts of damage being needed to put them down, and almost every class that isn't directly built on ammo abilities being completely useless really do make Mass Effect 2 difficult, and I'm just gonna say it again for those that remember the horrific nightmares of those levels. The Collector Ship and Horizon with the Psychons absolutely killing you in every moment. After that, I'd say comes Mass Effect 1. Like I said in my part about Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 1 starts out pretty difficult, but can turn to relatively easy very quickly depending on if you're a biotic, and if you know how to get some really strong gear early. Since Mass Effect 1 is much of a classic RPG, it allows you to really get some strong gear early. And at the easiest would be Mass Effect 3, though that comes with the caveat of you doing what I'm doing now and allowing Garrus to play the entire game by himself. And that is probably about that. I didn't actually script this one out as much. I just kind of sat down and did like about, I think this is in total like my 40th take on everything included. So yeah, I just really wanted to do something on N7 Day because I was writing something else. I just wanted to have an excuse to talk about Mass Effect. I hope you did enjoy it. I hope I didn't sound too stupid, and that's about all. Once again, I'm not Commander Shepard. Thank you for watching this, and I should go.